Hello, everyone. Welcome to Careers in Death Care, a day in the life of a Green Cemetery director with myself, Mandy Benwaleed, and John Christian Phifer. How do you actually get started on this process and open
Yeah,
up a cemetery?
it can be quite overwhelming. And I knew you were going to ask this question, so I made a list. So the steps when someone says John Christian, hi, my name is John Smith. I live in Iowa, and there's this pasture beside my granddad's house, and I want to start a conservation burial ground there. Okay, let's just use that as an example. First, ask yourself if you're willing to commit your life to this place that you create. It's a great responsibility. And if you create it, you must also create a succession plan for when you can no longer serve as the captain of that ship. You're attempting to birth into the world something that will live on for as long as the planet survives. You're making a commitment to the people who you bury and their children and their children and their children and so on. First, that's the big one. And then if they're still biting at wanting to create the space after that, identify the land that is in need of restoration and further protection. Do not take a pristine forest that does not need restoration and attempt to create a conservation burial ground on it. If you have a pristine forest or ecosystem, it doesn't need to be disrupted. And I fear that natural burial and conservation would do that. So first, identify land in need of restoration and further protection. Also ask yourself, what native people use the land, how and why? We need to start really paying attention to that and paying respect to that. You have to respect the history of the land and the people that have been there before us. Number 3 on my list is check zoning rules in your community. Every community, no matter where it is, if it's across the state of Tennessee, everywhere is different. Check your zoning rules. If there's a board of zoning appeals in place, start there for guidance within your community as to how is this land zoned, and what are the steps to rezone it for special use or for cemetery use. Then based on your business model, whether you're for-profit, community organization, or nonprofit, talk with your state board of funeral directors and embalmers. Start there and determine the rules and regulations in your state. Start in your state with that group and try to understand the rules and regulations surrounding cemetery creation based on your type of business, whether it's for-profit, community, or nonprofit. And if you don't understand the rules and or laws, hire an attorney to help translate them. Attorneys that specialize in funeral and burial law. Number 5, meet with all neighboring property owners and anyone that may be affected by the activity of the burial ground. Tell them of your plan, listen to their concerns, educate them lovingly. Even just because someone says they don't want something doesn't mean that they aren't supportive. They don't understand, and they may have some trauma surrounding death. So lovingly educate and lean in when you start these conversations. And abort mission if you see a red flag. If your community cannot embrace your idea, then it won't work, even if you find a way to push forward. Lastly, how we started, build a team that will help you succeed.
Do you need to have been a funeral director or have solid experience in the funeral industry to work at or to open a conservation or a green burial plot?
You do not. It's helpful to have a good knowledge of how and why the funeral industry is set up and managed the way that it is. It'll better help you understand how to include them. And it'll be easier for you to understand how to talk to families about what they might experience when their first call, when a death has occurred, is someone to move the body, which is generally a funeral director. So it is helpful. And if it's not you, find someone that can stand alongside you that has that knowledge. Pick up a job at the funeral home as a greeter. you don't have to have a license as a funeral director to operate a cemetery or create a conservation burial ground. And you might actually be surprised at how many funeral directors really embrace the idea of natural burial, because it's historic in nature and it's how we were operating up until the point of the modernization of the funeral industry. So there's a lot of people that love the idea of going back to basics and simplicity in a way to help people.